So, this little band of ours started in, well, we set the date actually on Tim's birthday, which is August the 16th in 1977. But we'd actually, I guess, been together for about 6 months before that, but that was our first kind of, I guess, gig in front of people, and it was actually I think it was his 21st birthday party. So 1980 was when we made our first record, being INXS, the album, and of course our first video, which was for Just Keep Walking. And it was actually a sort of a concept of Michael's, if I remember. Michael came up with the idea of putting us in sort of a box. And
just thought a box with the room and INXS on the floor and put us in it.
It was built out of the rawest materials, really simple scaffolding with plastic bags used for a floor and gaffer tape with the INXS written on the floor. And the wardrobe we had on probably would have totaled about $2.50.
So here it is, Just Keep Walking, our first ever video. And we recorded a track by an Australian band called The Loved Ones, and it was a song that they'd written called The Loved One. But we did a video for that. It was sort of the idea was for it to be sort of fairly live. And so one of the guys' jobs was to spray water on our faces so that we look like we were sweating and really working hard. But in actual fact, it sort of looks like everyone was kind of drowned, especially Michael. Michael looks like he's sort of been under a shower or something.
This next track is a track we recorded twice, and it's called The Loved One. Here's the first version.
This is a funny video, this one. It makes me laugh. It's called Stay Young. Well, how did we do? It's about 8 years later. So have a look, see what you think.
In Australia, people always had videos, you know. It wasn't such a big deal, you just made one. Because we have so many video shows here, you know. It's the only way we could get input, our music from overseas. No one toured that much then. So it was quite normal. We just, you know, we had about 8 video shows a week for them to be played on. We had Countdown, all this stuff, you know. So it seemed pretty normal. We made very cheap videos. Everybody made really cheap videos then.
Here's The One Thing, filmed in Adelaide. We did 3 videos in 2 days. Did The One Thing, Spy of Love and Don't Change in 2 days down in Adelaide. Very extravagant video, The One Thing. Lots of fun was had, as you can tell. Hope you enjoy it.
We never knew there was going to be an MTV. It was just a lucky thing, to be perfectly honest, I think. And since then we've used it. It's used us. You know.
Here's one of our least known ones called Spy of Love. It wasn't actually a single. We just made a video for the song because it was a favourite off the album. It's a very eccentric sort of a video, as you'll see.
Okay, this is the INXS video, Don't Change, from the album Shabu Shabar. And we didn't know what we were doing when we made this video, we just went for it, okay?
Original Sin was made in Japan, in Tokyo, down on the harbour there. And the idea behind that was to try and shoot something that wasn't so westernised, something unusual, you know.
There is certainly a very strange, almost humorous side to it. I mean, I kept giggling all the time because they had bikies coming in with plastic guns, the water in it and stuff, which was sort of fun. And they had, you know, trucks backing together and Tokyo appearing, and the trucks come together and then they come apart and it's a fair.
And we had a very big camera crew for that one. And they were all Japanese, all the crew. And I can remember every time they went, instead of saying, okay, roll camera, or, you know, take, or whatever, or this, they'd say, camera shuto, Mickey Mouse. And then we also shot another clip there, which was I Send a Message, which we shot in a temple. It's the big temple in the Emperor's Palace. I think it's in those gardens. And there's a big temple there. The head monk, he never let any Westerners or anybody in there to shoot anything commercialised, like a documentary or even a video clip for a rock band or television or films or anything. And for some reason they let us in there, which was young rock musicians from Australia, to shoot a clip. I couldn't figure it out. In the end, someone said, why did you do this? After centuries of never letting barbarians in here, why did you finally let us in here? And he said, well, I played the trumpet, actually, and I want to be on your video clip.
Yeah, Burn For You was kind of a milestone, I guess, for us with videos, because it was the first time that we'd done anything with Richard Lowenstein, and that went on to be, he's, I guess, sort of become almost like a seventh member when it comes to videos. And I remember we were doing like a Northern Queensland tour in Australia, playing some of the bigger coastal towns, and Richard and some of his entourage sort of flew in, and I think the majority of us just sort of laughed, because he's pretty sort of, he's sort of always going like this and going, oh yeah, well, and anyway, so he got us running through swamps, mangrove swamps, and all sorts of really weird things. And apparently Troy Davies, who's worked with Richard for a long time, doing makeup and styling and whatever, had forgotten most of his makeup. So Troy came up with this great idea of putting mud on our faces and whatever, and it was a lot of fun.
Here's Burn For You.
And Melting in the Sun, we filmed it at the Perth Entertainment Centre during sound checks and actually during the show as well. And then a lot of file footage was kind of injected into it of people dancing and bullfighting and all sorts of weird things.
This is a song written by all the members of INXS, plus a friend of Michael's, and it's called Love Is What I Say.
Someone said to me the other night, Paul Wasserman, a famous publicist from the States, said to me, I'm just trying to remember what it was like before MTV.
It's definitely been very important to the band. I mean, and I suppose the best part about it is that we had, on the whole, really good people to make videos with. I think that's the hard part, is you can make your music and you're a band, and that's really essentially all you are and should be doing and be preoccupied with. And to go and make videos, you have to be very lucky to find people who make videos the way you make your music.
Yeah, I think for us, in the initial period that we went to America, it was really important because MTV had just started, and it was like everyone watched it, and it became so important at that time to have a video and get it on MTV. And I think in a lot of ways that's what really helped, probably kick us off. If the video hadn't have been something that people wanted to see at that time, we may not have, sort of started the ball rolling as quick as we did.
Actually, well, what I remember watching is that I was doing a movie with Richard Lowenstein called Dogs in Space down in Melbourne, and it was all about the sort of punk days in Melbourne, and about in the late 70s, 76 or something. And I got so unraveled in this character while the single was released in the States and around the world that I kind of completely forgot that we had the single out. And I kept on getting these, telexes and stuff. And here I am in this rat-infested, flea-bitten Melbourne squat, playing the character of this really bad sort of punk band singer, and trying to understand what it meant, number what?
Some of the techniques have changed since the beginning of our video making. Trying to always stay a bit, left of field here and there if we can. One of the methods we tried, which was Richard Lowenstein's idea, was to use a f3 Nikon camera and shoot a roll of film off every 7 seconds through 35mm, and then develop the photograph, each photograph, and animate it, and then film it back on animation cameras, which is called pixelation, and then film with motion picture shadows and put them together, so the actual real live subject is, broken up into slow frames, and the shadows are moving consistently, which I thought was pretty good. But that was a really basic, a few lights, camera, and I thought it was a good idea.
this is what you need. This time, which was the first single off Listen Like Thieves, I think we were in England at the time, and it just seemed convenient to you know, sort of steer off track a little bit from Richard Lowenstein. And we, at that time, Godley and Cream, who used to be in a band called 10cc, were, you know, sort of the happening video people. And I guess we were just prompted to try using, you know, someone that was, you know, that was kind of the hip thing at the time. And it was just basically a live setup, but utilising Very lights, which were at the time a fairly new sort of lighting system. And they're the sort of lights that, you know, you can computer control. You can get them to do anything, point anywhere, change colours. So the whole sort of idea of that video was just to muck around with the lights and create certain different scenes and try and make it dynamic from a lighting point of view and from a performance point of view.
Probably the hardest video we've made as far as difficulty goes was probably Kiss the Dirt, where we're out in the middle of outback Australia. And it was just so hot. And I think we got there the night before and had some food at the hotel or the pub we were staying at. And I think most of us came down with sort of a mild case of food poisoning next day. We were out in 40 degrees plus heat, all laid flat out in the back of the truck just waiting for the shot. And it was very hard one to do. But then that night when we lit the big bonfire and did the night part of the shot, it was just fantastic because you've never seen more stars in your life than out in the middle of Australia.
We had to charter a light aircraft to get out there, and so we did that, and we thought, well, you know, we'll save a couple of bucks and we'll get, you know, sort of try and get cheaper airfares, you know. So and the guy comes up to the plane and he has, you know, like flip-flops or thongs or whatever you want to call them on, and shorts and a t-shirt, and his arms out the window and he's sort of flying the plane like this. And we finally get out to Kuvapiti, which is literally in the middle of one of the, you know, driest and most deserted areas on Earth. He lands and we do the film clip, which we did in the desert there, in what they call moon plains, which is just little rocks about that big for, I don't know, 500 square miles. And so we shot this video clip, and then we went to jump back in the plane, and Brian was the pilot in our aircraft, and he sort of said to me, you know, do you want to fly the plane? You know, would you like to have a fly the plane there, Sonny? Oh, sure, right, hey, I'll fly the plane, fine, you know. So you get in the plane, and I noticed that you're like, geez, Brian, you've been up the pub or something, you know. So no, what gives you that idea? You know, so, oh, okay, so we're up there, and we take off in the aircraft, and still thongs and t-shirt, and, you know, in the middle of the desert, and I was looking around, I said, oh, where's your navigational maps? You know, oh, they're out in the luggage compartment, actually. Oh, right, they're out in the luggage compartment, okay. So how do you know where you're going? You're in the middle of the desert. Don't worry, I've done this before. So, okay, so we get up in the plane, and we're going up and up and up, and as we, of course, in the desert, the heat's just coming off the desert, just rising really fast, and the plane's flying up in the air, going down, everyone's going, ooh, like this, you know, you can feel your whole body going up and down. So we finally get up there, and after the initial nausea of all that you know, turbulence, everyone goes, oh, that's great, I'll go to sleep now. And I'm up there and I'm thinking it's great because we've had the big nausea experience, and Brian's got his arm out the window and he's all very casual and no uniform or anything and no maps, and it's all very casual. So he said, we're up to fly the plane, it's great. So I'm sitting there and I'm flying the plane, you know, this man, I'm so, well, really, you push that and that goes up and down, and it's very interesting. And then I was, oh, look, and you just follow the compass and off you go. So he said, now just follow that compass bearing and you'll be right. So, okay, so I'm sitting on the compass bearing. And Brian proceeds to fall asleep.
We're flying along and everyone's like really tired from partying and stuff, so it was like crashed. And I've woken up, and the first thing I saw, I was just behind the pilot's seat, was the pilot, like this. And there's all dribble coming down his shoulder and stuff, right? And look over, and Andrew's flying the plane, like this, terrified, you know. It's like, I just went, what's going on here? You wake up, you know. And so that was quite a scare. And then when we touched down, I think it was when we were coming back to Broken Hill, because he'd patched the tyre on the way out himself instead of, you know, getting someone else to do it. The tyre blew on impact and the sort of plane went out of control basically and spiralling off the runway. So we almost kissed the dirt.
This is Listen Like Thieves, which was done about the time, about a month after What You Need came out, for the Listen Like Thieves album. And here it is. Well, actually, Need You Tonight was definitely one of my favourite videos we've ever done. But something about it. I remember my brother coming in and he had a rat, you know, this rat called Plague, and a big white rat, and I used to take it out all the time, poor rat. You know, I think it ran away and eventually got sick of nightclubs, but he was just staying, and I said, oh, can I put Plague in the video? Maybe that'd be good, you know. So we had him running up my arm and biting me and stopping, running around. And it's just sometimes those little things where someone does something, and something by accident happens that can make a video really interesting. You can't always script these things, they just happen sometimes, you know.
Here's one of my faves, Need You Tonight.
I think the most spectacular to make video was Devil Inside. We filmed that at Balboa Beach with Joel Schumacher, who's just done Flatliners, the movie, and he did Lost Boys, and I don't know if you remember that movie, Car Wash. But he was quite a character. I mean, just to work with him was sort of extravagant, if you like. And it was quite funny. I mean, it was a very close-knit community down there at like those sort of southern Cal beaches. And, there was people everywhere, you know, it was like mayhem, constant mayhem the whole time, from onlookers and the whole bit. And we sort of took over this bar, and we had half the onlookers sort of that looked okay for the camera and that, and there were all these surfies there, and bikers and surf Nazis and skaters, and they're all doing everything all over the place. It was just like, wow.
The New Sensation clip was us performing out on the balcony of this old cafe, I think a restaurant, I think it was. And it was freezing, it was the middle of winter, and we had to do this animation part of it where you'd move very slowly and you'd have a set of actions and you had to remember what they were and then come back and do the same thing. And because it was so cold, you know, you'd be sitting in one spot for, say, 20 minutes or something. And it was a killer trying to do that because you couldn't really sit there without freezing, basically.
I always remember Prague as being a feeling of satisfaction with the crew that we used, the Czechoslovakian Film Commission. And just the whole mood of the city, the whole ambience of it, really generated an impression which I'll always remember as being an inspiration. The architecture of the city and just the atmosphere outside is so dense because it's so cold, makes a really interesting light, sort of gets glowy hues around subjects. It was very good, except it's so cold and most of the crews stand around drinking vodka all day, so one day I wasn't as strong as I thought I could have been. And for about 2 days after that, every shot that I was in, I was sort of leaning against a pole or being held up by something. So if you have a look at that track, you know what I mean.
And Guns in the Sky was made kind of in between shooting New Sensation. He'd have another camera, and we had this little sort of shot set up running through this hallway in the same building. And while we all had a minute spare while they were setting up for another scene or something like that, we'd all run out and throw on some other piece of clothing and walk through this hallway singing Guns in the Sky, you know. And it was great. We made that video in 20 minutes, I think, literally.
And coming up next is Guns in the Sky.
Never Tear Us Apart was actually the initial reason for going to Prague, because the actual city was one of the only cities sort of in Europe that of old architecture that wasn't kind of affected during World War II, wasn't bombed or whatever. And every single building is like a work of art. You know, every sort of facade is just all ornate and sculptured and just beautiful. And so Richard had been there on a holiday for some reason, and he felt that it would be a great backdrop for a song like Never Tear Us Apart. Suicide Blonde's the first song, or the first single lifted from X album, which is the current album. The whole concept, I guess, was just the camera rushing towards the band or the individuals, so that it felt like the whole thing was moving forward all the time. And it's also what we sort of carried through into a lot of the artwork, like the album cover. The idea was, the front cover is all of us sort of coming up, out at the camera, trying to sort of simulate a movement sort of thing.
This one's definitely my favorite, Suicide Blonde.